And there has been a pretty significant shift in the way Americans are now viewing the war and how they view Ukraine's leader. It appears that the confidence that Americans have in Zelensky has plummeted. The percentage of those who are confident that Zelensky will do the right thing has gone from 72% down to 48%. 41% of Americans believe that US support for Ukraine has been too much, and 78%, that's very high, actually support a peace deal being negotiated between Russia and Ukraine. Let's just look at this analysis that's been on CNN.
Feelings towards Zelensky have changed also dramatically. Look at this. Confident Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Back in 2022, it was the clear majority, 72% through the floor. Through the floor by 2024, just 48% of Americans say that they're confident that Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. And GOP confidence has also plummeted dramatically. Now the clear majority of Republicans are not confident that Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs.
So, Adam, obviously part of this is they are worried about their tax dollars, just how much money has been sent going over to Ukraine. But that's probably not the full story. I think people really well and truly want to see this 3-year war come to an end, and they want to so soldiers stop dying.
Yeah, look, that's the first time that I'd seen those figures, and they are just extraordinary, really. I did not think that the public's view in the US would change so much, but I think it's testament to the impact that Donald Trump is having on US public opinion. There's a very big chunk of Americans who believe what he says, especially Republicans, and basically those percentages have tracked what President Trump has been saying. But I think also that this war, it's over 3 years now. Some people say 1 million people have died. I mean, This is much worse than a Vietnam. I mean, this is much worse in terms of lives lost from the Western point of view. So I think people do want to see it ending. And, I just think, my personal view was that it was lost right up front when the West decided not to go all in and to actually fight Russia. It just basically gave enough money and enough support for Ukraine to hold them back. But that's clearly just that's just a path to more and more death. And I think the realisation now, whether it's London or Washington, is that those countries are not willing to actually put their troops on the ground and fight Russia. For obvious reasons, and so there has to be some sort of diplomatic solution.
And it's really sad to hear that Zelensky thinks that this war isn't going to end for a long, long time. That essentially means that we're just going to have more days, weeks, months of people dying over this war. Anyway, I still hope that a peace deal can be reached. But questions are also being asked after Zelensky revealed just this year, 3 years into the war, that he's missing $100 billion sent from the United States. Let's listen to this.
Організації. Дивіться, я як президент воюючої країни вам говорю, ми отримали більше 75. Тобто 100 мільярдів з цих 177 або 200, говорять навіть деякі люди, ми ніколи не отримували. І це важливо.
$100 billion, that is not a small amount of money. And it's strange that this was only really raised this year after the election. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel has spoken out about this, and I'm sure he is supported by many American taxpayers that would actually like to know what happened to the $100 billion that Zelensky claims he never received. This is what Kash Patel had to say.
I've asked this Congress to investigate where has this money gone? The American people are owed that answer because it's our money. It's our taxpayer dollars.
And there's a lot of really good reason to be concerned because, the Ukraine was known as a, place of corruption, a place for money laundering.
Yeah. It's not like we sent $1 billion, as if that was even a small number to begin with, right? We've sent 100 times that to one country. I don't know how this Congress is allowed to get away with it.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary amount of money. Are you confident we're going to get the answers here?
Well, look, I hope so. But yes, it is an extraordinary amount of money. So extraordinary, I thought that something may have been lost in translation, actually, with the comments in the first place. But it is just such a large amount. But I think it goes to the limits of foreign governments, funding other governments. They can't control the money. They don't really know where it goes when it arrives. I think it's surely perfectly reasonable for American taxpayers, many of whom have just been getting checks for hundreds of dollars here and there in California for bushfires or for floods in other states, and then they see these huge sums of money going to a foreign government, of a country that they couldn't even place on a map. You can understand at least surely the anger of ordinary Americans about this potentially lost money. And I think it's also a reminder people need to be cautious about being too enthusiastic in their support for various politicians or governments when we don't yet know the full story about where all this money's gone. I mean, there could well be stories come out in coming weeks and months of extremely high graft, which will be very embarrassing for some parties to the war.
Absolutely. After the heated exchange in the Oval Office between Zelensky, Trump and JD Vance, Piers Morgan reshared an interview he did with President Bill Clinton in 2013. And Bill Clinton said that he had a really good, blunt relationship with Putin. He said that the right strategy is to be brutally honest in private and avoid embarrassing them in public. Now, President Clinton also confirms that Putin kept his word on the deals that they made together. And that's pretty relevant now when you hear Trump saying what he has to say and then Zelensky is seeming to throw doubt that diplomacy could even work. Adam, what do you make of it?
Well, look, President Putin's been around for 25 years or so, I think. I mean, he's said a lot of things. I'm sure he's broken his word many times and he's kept his word many times. I think, that interview, it was 2013, I think, and Bill Clinton was almost painting, a flattering picture of Putin. I'm sure different former leaders have different views. Look, at the end of the day, nations don't really have friends. I think many statesmen have said they have interests and they basically behave according to those interests. That's the case for the United States. It's the case for China. It's the case for Russia, essentially, when you strip away all the rhetoric. So, look, I think we just have to assess any deal with Putin that arises and hope that he does keep his word. But there are no guarantees in diplomacy, of course.
Of course. Now, Donald Trump has a message to Americans and he says that we should spend less time worrying about Putin and more time worrying about migrant rape gangs, drug lords, murderers and people from mental institutions entering our country so that we don't end up like Europe. He certainly knows how to speak pretty strongly. How does this resonate, do you think, with the American people?
Yeah, well, look, I think the timing was extremely good with that tweet. I mean, I thought we saw overnight or a few days ago, a car ploughing into more people in Germany, which goes to their, extremely troubled system of multiculturalism there and the general narrative that Europe is in decline. So I think Trump is right. I think I mentioned earlier, most Americans cannot place Ukraine on a map, and I think that they'd be far more concerned about local crime issues, inflation, cost of living and so forth than they could be about a foreign war that's on the other side of the world. So I think once again, Trump is just illustrating that he's a canny politician. And I think so far in his first few months of the presidency, his popularity at least hasn't fallen in my understanding.
That's right. Look, finally, Elon Musk appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast where he sat down for another 3-hour interview and he revealed more about Doge waste that is coming to light. And he also doubled down on this huge claim that the Biden administration refused the offer from SpaceX to rescue astronauts because of political reasons. Look at this.
We offered to bring them back early. This offer was rejected by the Biden administration.
Why?
For political reasons.
That's so crazy.
There's no way that they're going to make anyone who's supporting Trump look good.
Wow. What do you think they would have done if they had won? How would they get those people back?
No, they can only get them back with a SpaceX spacecraft, but they pushed the return date past the inauguration date.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they would have let you do it, but after the...
Yeah.
Wow. And so it would have been them authorizing you.
Well, there isn't anyone else to do it.
NASA can't get them.
Only the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft is the only one that is considered safe enough to bring them back. So NASA concluded that the Boeing spacecraft was not safe. So that's why they're stuck there.
Adam, it's a shocking claim.
Look, it certainly is. I mean, it's hard to believe, but it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, politics is a nasty business, and certainly the animosity between the Biden administration and Elon Musk was very intense, was very significant, and so from a political point of view, they would not have wanted to give him a win. But we have to think of these poor two people stuck up there. They were meant to be there for 8 days. They've been there for 8 months. We can only hope that they come back successfully soon. But I think the broader point here too is that it's the private sector really that's the engine of innovation and scientific advancement here. You've got the US government that is relying on Musk to bring these people back. That is somewhat embarrassing in a way, but as I said, just a reminder that the innovation is in the private sector, not the government sector.
Absolutely. Adam Creighton, Senior Fellow and Chief Economist at the IPA, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.